Hello, hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Raymond.
Hi. We'll give everybody a few minutes more. I'm sure we'll have some people jumping in the next few minutes. Hope everybody is doing well on this Thursday afternoon. As this month is flying by, I can't believe we're at the end of September already. Holy cow. Where has time gone? Trisha, I like your hair.
And welcome to the new change champions on the call. There's a few of them here.
Oh, yeah. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Returning and new. We appreciate everybody that is participating in today's session. Awesome. Getting more people coming in.
Mike Chavez is in the house.
Whoop. Mike. All right. Got some of our project team members. I don't know if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves. I think for the most part, everybody pretty much knows me, but if not, my name is Marina Manzano, and I'm the Director of Procurement Contract and Distribution Services. And I am the project lead, sponsor lead for the P2P implementation for this campus. And then Bianca, would you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Bianca Wolgamuth. I'm Strategic Sourcing Specialist. I'm basically helping out Marina with this entire project. I'm helping her like schedule all the meetings and just keeping everything going because she has a lot to do. So nice to meet everybody if I haven't met you in person, and welcome.
And let's go to Becky.
I'm Becky Lappin. I'm the Director of Payment Services, and I help Tina Livingston with the accounts payable part of this, and I'm in charge of the supplier, trying to get all of our suppliers into the system.
And how about Tina?
Hi, I'm Tina Livingston, the account payable manager. I have a lot of help, or I'm helping a lot with the voucher side of CSUBUY, actually making the payments and getting everything through the system so that we can pay those suppliers.
And Bethany?
Hi, everyone. I'm Bethany Davis. I have recently been instated as the P2P data and budget analyst. And right now I'm just helping out wherever needed.
Great. And Mike, would you like to introduce yourself?
I am Michael Chavez, the Interim Associate Vice President for Business and Financial Services. All the areas that are participating in the P2P project under my guidance and leadership report to me. Procurement, payment services, we're getting assistance from the the accounting department with our delegation of authority requirements. And so I am basically here to help support this project as we move forward and keep it going in the right direction. And one of my bucket list of items that I want to get done before I retire in December 2024. Thank you very much for everybody that's participating.
And I won't force them to introduce themselves, but I would like to mention Liz Gammas in accounting and reporting services. She is helping assist on the accounting side with this implementation. And then we also have Tracy Lopez in IT, who's supporting us on the IT aspect of this project. And then I do see that we have Nick with Rise Now. Nick, would you like to introduce yourself to the group?
Thanks, Marina. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Nick Thalen with Rise Now, just working with you all in a change management capacity to get training coordinated and all those campus-centric items, working with Marina and Bianca. We've also got another colleague from Rise Now that's going to be joining, Amanda Kovacs. So it's good to see you all again. I think I remember some of these faces from February during the roadshow. So good to see you, and thanks for having me.
Great, thank you, Nick. And I believe Amanda is in. Amanda, did you want to say hello?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So same as Nick, I will be supporting you all in this process and a successful go live.
Great. Okay. All right. Bianca, can you go ahead and pull up the deck? So we have a little bit of a presentation for you guys, and then let's go ahead and see if we can get through it, and then we'll do Q&A afterwards. Okay, so this is our Change Lead Go Live check-in number 1. Okay. I don't think I have the ability to advance it, Bianca, so you'll have to be my driver. So here's the agenda for today and the topics that we are going to discuss. So kind of wanted to give you guys a little status update of what we've been working on. So the system is being configured for the campuses. So as you'll recall, we spoke before. Initially, there were 9 campuses that were expected to go live all at one time. And I think the core team, which is, the chancellor's office folks, along with the Rise Now consultants and some other individuals that are involved with the project, realized that was going to be quite ambitious to do that many campuses going live all simultaneously. So then it was decided to break it up into groups. So the first 2 campuses to go live were Fresno and Chico, and then the next grouping was Bakersfield and SLO. So our campuses did a user acceptance testing last week. We were graciously invited to the SLO campus for us to work on their campus to do the testing. And we had the consultants there working with us, as well as Tu McClurg, who is at the chancellor's office. She's the assistant director that's kind of leading this project. And so we all got together to go through a variety of test scripts to test the system and test our access and see how it was working. We were there Monday through, well, actually we got there Sunday. So we were there Sunday through Thursday, working from 8:30 to like 4 with a half-hour lunch and pretty much no breaks, just putting in all these test scripts to check and see to make sure things are working as they should be. So we're happy to report, just based on that first week, we had about an 80% success rate. This week, we're continuing with UAT virtually to retest and resolve a couple of fails that we got and some system issues that we came across. So we've been meeting with the team in various sessions this week to finish out any test scripts that we haven't finished last week. We'll finish up this week just to make sure everything's working as it should. So, the core team that participated in the testing were impressed by the campuses able to complete as much as we did last week, as well as our teamwork. So SLO was very gracious and very welcoming, and it was nice to be on their campus, and it was great to work in person and be able to ask those questions. So be able to actually get into the system and test it. And, it was a little slow in the beginning to kind of learn it, but once we got into it and started working on it, it got a lot easier, and the functionality has some really cool things. I was telling somebody that there's a lot of dashboards that you can view, and there's information that you can click on. It will show you like my requisitions. You click on that and it shows you all the requisitions that you have submitted. It to the left side, it can show you your information by supplier. So there's lots of different things that you can look for and search by to find information, because I know that's something a lot of requesters have struggled with in the past, and then they have to, you know, request copies of things from procurement or request information from procurement. And I'm sure a lot of you would prefer to be able to just have that information at your fingertips and not have to rely on calling departments to get that information for you. So that's something we're looking forward to, and I'm sure you guys would be happy to have. Becky, did you want to add anything about UAT?
Just that for having been through about 15 UATs before, I was happily surprised. I thought it really went very well. And the support team that was there from Rise Now and 2 were fabulous, very knowledgeable. And I just think it went very well.
Great. Next slide, please. Okay, so here's kind of where we're at with the rollout plan. So you can see we are doing from August and September production readiness activities. I've been working with IT. We're trying to put together the plan to get access for everybody. So, you know, it's a big change for our campus. If you think about it right now, nobody's inputting requisitions into the CFS module. In this system, you all will be putting requisitions into a system. So that means you'll have a role that you'll need in the CSUBUY. So because CSUBUY integrates with CFS, then IT has to create that role in CFS for it to feed into CS. We have identified folks that we believe will need access to the system, both as requesters and approvers. And that list is around 300 plus people campus-wide. So that means IT is going to have to get that list and get everybody access. So we've figured out a way to kind of fast track that access, so that way we're not having to process 300 plus forms in 2 weeks' time. And even then, it's still quite a bit of challenge. So there's lots of different things we've been working on behind the scenes to try our level best to get us ready for when we're planning on having the go live. So that's what we've been working on, making sure we've got all the checks and balances for the workflows and have identified processes and procedures. We are looking at doing, and I think we'll share this in another slide, all the different training dates. We're working on scheduling that. That'll be coming up next month. So there'll be lots of activities for both change champions and then campus training and user training. And we anticipate going live in November, hopefully early November, followed by hypercare, and then December, and then past December, you know, long-term support. So, you know, with that said, I don't want people to have this fear and concern that we're just going to toss you in and you guys are going to be expected to figure this out. You know, we are here to support you. The Chancellor's Office is here to support us. They're providing a lot of resources along with the Rise Now team to make sure that we are doing training, and there will be training guides and materials to get us through this process. Okay. Next slide, please. So here's some upcoming important dates to keep in mind. Today we have our Change Champion meeting. We will be putting out a newsletter tomorrow, and then another meeting for Change Champions October the 10th. And I put that under the UAT, but I should have put it on the next meeting. So on our next meeting, we're going to provide more information about the Change Champion mini UAT. And what that is we're going to give you guys the ability to do some testing like we did when we went to SLO. You'll actually get first access to use the system, try it out, and that way if you have any questions or any feedback, we can gladly take that and provide that to the core team. And you know, that'll be very helpful for us to identify maybe anything we might have missed from an end user's perspective, right? So that'll give you a first opportunity to use that system. So that'll be coming up. All these are dates, newsletters are coming out. We will be sending out campus notifications as well for the campus-wide trainings. We are working on getting all of our correspondence together, and we'll be releasing that out as well. There will be a campus facilitator training, and I'm going to discuss that in a slide coming up. Procurement's got to have training for what we do in the system, right? Because we create the purchase orders that we submit to the vendors. Accounts payable has specialized training dedicated for the duties they do, processing the invoices and the vouchers and the payments. We have a campus supplier management training that's going to be done for that team. And then, so October the 23rd through the 26th is going to be that week of when we do the campus customer, which is the end users, and the approver training. So that's folks that submit requisitions. And those are payments to vendors. When we talk about procure to pay, again, I want it to be very clear that this is for payments that are made to vendors and vendors only. This does not include payments that are made to employees. This does not include payments that are made to students. This is not for interdepartment or inter-business unit payments, because I know sometimes in the past, folks have gotten quotes from like IT or facilities, and they assume that means they need to submit a requisition for that quote. But we don't make payments from one department to another. Those are internal payments that are processed through either a chargeback or through a journal entry or expenditure transfer form, right? So for the purposes, just know when you hear CSUBUY procure to pay, that is when you need to make a payment to a vendor. So there is direct pays to vendors in procure to pay. However, direct pays for employee reimbursements, student reimbursements are going to be outside of procure to pay. So we will be updating all of our handbooks and manuals and directions so that way it's clear of these differences. And we'll be covering that in training as well. And so far, we have anticipated go live date of November the 6th. And that means when we say go live, that system will be up and running, and requesters can submit requisitions in the system for procurement to process those orders to vendors. And so when we're fully up and running, that means the requisition form that you're familiar with is going to be no longer accepted in procurement. It's going to be removed from the website, and requisitions will need to be processed through that new system. Okay, next slide.
Can I also mention, yeah, the direct pay will not be accepted for vendor payments in AP either, to the AP when we notify everyone. Okay, now we've cut off. The only DPs that we would accept would be for employee and student reimbursements. Just want to make sure that's clear. Thanks.
Okay, so I know we've kind of touched upon this before where people were asking, is there a way for a analyst to review a requisition before it goes to a DOA approver? Yes, there is, and this is the process. So the ability is for a requester, and that can be an ASA, an ASC, or whoever is going to create and submit a requisition, to create the requisition in procure to pay, and then assign the cart to an analyst to review it. So if you're DOA approver, your dean or your vice president is requesting this process, this is how that can be accomplished, because there isn't a workflow in the system for us to do this. So this is how we've figured out how this can be done. That requester can assign the cart to an analyst to review it, right? Whether they're checking it for chart field string validity, whether they're checking it for funding, you know, it can go to one individual. They can then review it. They then become the requester to then send that requisition to the DOA approver, who will then approve it. So the dean or the AVP or the VP can see that, okay, I'm receiving this requisition from my analyst, so I'm aware they've reviewed it and it's approved. So they're not creating the requisition. You're not having to do, you know, all the work of creating a requisition. The department, ASA, ASC, creates the requisition. However, they submit the cart to you. You become the requester. You kind of assign it to yourself, and then you submit it to that DOA approver. All right, so I'm sure some folks are going to have questions on that, and we'll make sure to cover that in training. And I didn't put it on this slide, but I do want to make it clear, because now requesters, it's a security role in CFS and P2P. And we're having to already do 300 plus access for this implementation that we have to do in a very short time. We're trying to get this done in about 2 weeks time. And because of workflow reviews, so if something comes in that requires, we're doing built-in reviews, so procurement isn't manually having to do the checks with various areas, like, oh, check with IT, check with facilities, check with HR for independent contractor review. These are going to be things that are going to be built into the system. And so these individuals that review and approve these, should they have questions, they will be reaching out to requesters within the system, right? Everything's self-contained within the system. Notifications will come to your email, but they're within the system, because we want all of the correspondence to be within the system for auditing trail and auditing purposes. So we will not be having students as requesters in the system. They will not be creating or submitting requisitions. This will be for staff only. So I do want to make that that clear as well. So just kind of to touch on this, when it was determined that this system was going to be done, it was done at a system-wide level. It was determined all 23 campuses are moving to this system, right? So no campus has the ability to opt out. This is a change that was approved and determined system-wide. We are one of 9 campuses in the first wave of campuses that are implementing. However, in the next 2 years, every campus is going to be on the system, including the chancellor's office. So I did kind of want to point that out to everybody. The system configuration is based on CSU system-wide best practices as determined by subject matter experts at the chancellor's office and campuses. You know, I think one of the things that was important was for more standardization across campuses, because looking at how CFS is currently structured right now, there's a lot of differences at every campus, and they really wanted a system that was more standardized across the 23 campuses than everything being so different. So that was how this system was configured. So with that said, as a result of that, we are aware, and the system is aware, that that means campus processes will need to change to reflect those practices in order to create efficiencies, streamline processes. How we're currently doing business will likely not be the same when we're in P2P. And then that will also impact not just P2P, but also other practices and policies and procedures that departments, specifically procurement and accounts payable, may have. Next slide, please. All right, so here are some upcoming trainings. Kind of wanted to go over the times and or the dates and the roles. So campus facilitator training is on the 12th. That's going to be virtual and it's going to be instructor-led training. I don't know if we know who's going to be providing that training yet, but probably likely Rise Now. We have the procurement and AP training that we're going to be doing this month, the campus supplier training, and again, the campus customer training that we're doing. That's like later October, and that'll be a webinar format. So folks on that won't be accessing the system. So really you change champions will be the ones to actually get access to the system. So you guys are getting something that other folks won't be getting until we go live. Next slide, please. Okay, so campus facilitator, we've said this a couple of times. What is it? So this is going to be an actual instructor-led training on October the 12th. So what we are looking for is folks that are going to be responsible for training and developing the end users to onboard them within CSUBUY. So it's to socialize the AP and procurement, instructor-led training, and anticipate campus-specific questions that may come up in subsequent trainings. So obviously this is going to be your procurement team and your AP team, but if there's anybody within our Change Champion network that's interested in participating in this training, that you can be a support to your department, to your division, we certainly welcome you to participate and assist, right? Because oftentimes with these implementations that are campus-wide, it takes a village. And if you're the type of person that picks up quickly and you have an aptitude for technology and you like training, we would love to have your help and your support. So if that's something you would like to do, please contact Bianca Wolgamith. We've had a couple of people from some different areas already kind of contact us and say they'd like to do this. So we are happy for their help. All right. Nick or Amanda, if there's anything else that you'd like to add on this particular process, role, slide, feel free to chime in.
Yeah, thanks.
No. Oh, go ahead.
I
Sorry,
was going to
Nick.
say, no, that's okay.
I was
would
just going to say that I think it was perfect explanation. Rise Now will be facilitating the training for the campus facilitators. It's definitely a great opportunity to get more involved and have more of a leadership role for CSUBUY for your campus. So if you're considering it and you feel comfortable and confident, definitely suggest to become part of the training. Doesn't commit you to anything, but it definitely gives you an insider view and gives you the opportunity to become an individual to help the rest of the campus whenever that's necessary or whenever the need arises. Go ahead, Nick.
Thanks, Amanda. I guess the other thing I would encourage you all being Change Champions, and nobody knows your campus better than you do. So this is really your opportunity to further momentum or build the momentum that's already happening with this and champion the project, quite frankly, and just have that opportunity to, to be that leader. So that's really what this is designed to help with. And you can be kind of that expert in your area of expertise, wherever that is on the campus. So thank you.
Great. Thank you both. Okay, Bianca, next slide. Oh, that's it. We're at the end. So now is the time for Q&A. Anybody got any questions? Don't be shy.
I have a quick question, Marina. I know that you mentioned that the analyst would become the requester once they review.
Yeah.
Will the initial requester still have access in Procure to Pay to view the requisition that they put in and follow its progress?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
I think it shows who initiates it, because I think when we did this in testing, didn't show like the two individuals, like who created it and then who submitted it. Yeah, I think we were testing it out to make sure on that. And there's two ways of doing it, but we felt this way was the cleanest way for the approver to see if it came directly from there. Because there's another way where you can just have a comment, but I think for a DOA approver, I think it's just easier if they see that requisition with that name attached, they know, okay, that analyst has reviewed it and approved it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And certainly too, if you receive it and you have questions on it, there is an ability to like send it back with questions to ask the requester if there's something they might have missed or gotten wrong. So there's that ability, that functionality in there too. So that's helpful. Let's see.
Was
what
that
other-
Adriana Hook that asked that question?
Yes, it
I
was.
wanted to acknowledge Adriana just made the Pro Card Hall of Fame for
Oh,
yeah for September. So thank you very much for your hard work with Pro Card.
thank
We
you so
appreciate it.
much.
Yay.
Yeah, and then there was something else I was going to mention about that, and now it totally slipped my mind.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
But
wanted to interject and congratulate Adriana.
it'll come
So,
to me later, and we'll be sure to cover that in slides so people know. It's not, there's no way to make it a like a required step. Like there's no way to build it into workflow for to have a reviewer. So this is something that was determined. There are like two ways you can do this. So that way, at least it would make it for the DOA approvers, for those that want to see that, right? Because I'm maybe there's not every department or every AVP or dean that wants that, but if they do want that, then that functionality, this is the workaround that we came up with to be able to do that.
Okay, that's great. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Tammy has her hand up.
Yep.
Hi, I actually have two questions. One is related to that approval process. Will the invoices follow the same process for approval when paying invoices against POs?
You mean, will they follow the existing process or?
Well, I'm assuming that invoicing will more than likely be more automated.
Tina, Becky, you guys want to cover that one?
It should be, yes. They can upload the invoices. But Tina, I don't know, I don't recall seeing who it goes to. I know it goes to someone to say if it's services and if it's not a three-way match, right?
Right. If it's a service provided, the person who requested it will get a notification to approve that it happened. And then once they approve that, then it'll go to AP and we'll process against the PO.
Okay. Then my other question is regarding the change in direct pays. We don't do very many vendor direct pays, but we do several phone vendors. So will we be required to process POs for them? Just wondering how that's going to work because those are ever changing on a monthly basis.
Now, I am not sure about the commodity code, if that's what's going to trigger an actual PO. But I don't think it's going to, I mean, it's still going to route the same way. It's still going to have to, if it goes to the PO system, then they will open a PO for that amount. It's not like you're requesting a whole bunch of months. So if it goes to the PO, right now I don't know off the top of my head if that commodity code would trigger it.
I don't think so. We don't think so. We think it's a direct pay in the system. There's all these options that you choose what you're going to be buying, and then most of them are going to actually route to procurement as a regular PO. But if there's a choice for a direct pay.
Oh, okay.
And
I think
I'm
looking it up right now, and so there are. It's a very intuitive system. It depends on how you put in the commodity code, and it's interesting because sometimes there's commodity codes that are like entitled the same thing, but they're one's meant for procurement, like PO, one's meant for direct pays. So I think for that, Cami, if you select utilities, telecommunications, that will funnel as a direct pay, as opposed to if you select just regular telecommunications, then that will funnel as a requisition PO.
Oh, okay.
So you just, yeah, kind of got to be mindful on how you select it. The really helpful thing is, because obviously in the system, you guys will need to know your chart field strings, which I know most of you guys do, but you know, there have been instances where procurement's gotten chart field strings that aren't on DOA, you know. What's helpful is we've created a commodity codes that are tied to an account number. So it should auto-populate the correct account number. And Liz and I work together on it to make sure the accurate account code has been selected for that. So that should take some of the guesswork off of you guys, because I know that's always been like, how do I know what's the right account number to use? Because there's like 10 million out there, right? And how does anybody know all the account codes that are available? And honestly, even at times procurement has struggled with like, oh crap, which is the right account code to use for that? So we've identified and mapped the correct account code that ties to a specific commodity code. So by you selecting the commodity code for a vehicle or a software maintenance or a computer, that will connect to the correct account code. So you would then just really need to put in your department fund and your department DEPT ID, and then obviously your BU, right? Your business unit.
Marina, so Laura and Bishop is asking in the chat, is there a place where we can get a list of active account numbers? There is a way in CFS, but what Marina is trying to explain is that with P2P, you won't need the list of active account numbers because it will auto-populate when you start to enter the chart field string, that it's gonna auto-populate for you in the system. But if you'd like, we can get that answer for you, how to pull it up in CFS.
And that might be a change for some departments. You're not going to be able to change that because this is a CSU wide that we're trying to
yeah, it won't even let you
standardize the chart of accounts so that everyone uses the same account number for the same supplies and services.
Yeah, and also we are changing the commodity codes that we currently have in CFS in P2P. So I can't remember if we were using NIGP or something different in CFS, and we're using a different one, a more modern and universal commodity codes in the new Jagger system. So we're really trying to modernize and go with the more current and accurate version of commodity codes. And Jeanette's had her hand up for a while. Jeanette?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll take my hand down. Okay, just two things I wanted clarification so that I'm not telling people wrong about this. So P2P, procure to pay, and kind of following up Cami to make sure I understand, this is all part of the process. The requisition, the purchase order, the payment is all part of this process. That's how we're streamlining it, right? So we won't have to worry about paying it later. It's going to be a part of it. Correct? It's systemic.
Yes,
I mean, we'll need an
as long
invoice.
as the invoice comes in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not gonna, okay. And then the other thing, I just, you mentioned that there can be questions during the process. And I wanted to know, like in Adobe Sign, if I'm reviewing something and it's not quite right, I can't say, okay, we cancel the thing. So in this process, if there are questions and going back and forth in a little discussion or clarification, it won't cancel the process, will it? Do you know what I mean? Like an Adobe Sign, if I go back and say you didn't do something, or will you add something? They have to start over.
Yes. So there is, you have to be mindful, and we learned this during UAT, like, and they warned us, the consultants were very good about telling us, make sure you don't do this step, because if you do, it kills the requisition, and you don't want to do that, right? Because if the requester spent a lot of time creating that requisition, and if you just need to modify it for one thing, don't do that last step, because then it kills it, and then they'd have to build a whole new one. So rather than, and I don't remember what the name of that step was, but you can like resend it to the requester for them to make a change to it, and then they resubmit it versus rejecting it or something along those lines. And that essentially kills it, which is similar to that step that, you know, in Adobe Sign. But I mean, I get it with Adobe Sign, because really that functionality is just you're signing on a document, so there's not a whole lot of change you can necessarily do to that. But in procure to pay, you can change things, right? So
All right, thank you.
Another thing I'd like to point out to you guys on the requisition is that you guys will be the ones creating the requisitions and submitting those. So if there's a change to a chart field on a created PO, you would have to initiate that change as well. Because I know right now the process is, oh, you guys email procurement and you request us to change a chart field. And, you know, we have to look it up and see if payments have been processed against it. We can't modify that line. We have to just decrease it by the amount that's been paid against it, and then carry the balance to a new line. So if I have a PO that has 20 lines, guess what that means? I am then creating 20 new lines and decreasing the 20 existing lines to what's been paid, carry forward the balance to 20 new lines with a new chart field string. That process is going to have to be initiated by the requester. Procurement can't change chart field strings because it's got to go through that workflow review and approval process. So because right now it's going to do that on a requisition where it has to go through, you know, to the DOA approver and everything. So this is within a system. So procurement can't override it and just change chart fields. So just, you know, be aware that that process is going to start with you. So be mindful of that, because that can be a lot of work and that can create, you know, some delays. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend creating requisitions knowing that, oh, in 2 weeks, a month, we're going to possibly change that chart field string. You know, I know there's sometimes where something's a rush and you're waiting on a project number, so you just assign it a chart field string in the meantime until another chart field string can be created. But just know that that has to go through that workflow process, and that's gonna be extra work and extra steps.
Marina, I have a quick question, just to make sure I understand. So we, in athletics, seemingly at different times have a number of direct pays that we do that are not associated with a PO. So for those types of things, say the conference sends us invoices for officials and, you know, equipment that they pay for ahead of time that we have to then repay them. Are we then kind of simply uploading that invoice in CSU, in the CSUBUY, in this new system to pay?
If it's a payment that's made to a vendor,
Yes.
then yes.
Okay.
But the vendor has to be set up as a supplier.
Oh, good point. That's another thing for us to discuss here. So procurement, like currently, when you guys submit a requisition, if the vendor's not existing in CFS, procurement will, you know, send the 204 form to get them added on as a vendor. And then once we have that tax form filled out, we send that to accounts payable, and the supplier manager there will create that vendor in CFS. In the new system, the supplier will need to onboard themselves in this system. And the reason why that's important is because of accuracy, right? We want to make sure that this is their tax information. They should be the ones putting in their tax IDs and making sure all that information is accurate and not relying on a second party to put that information in for them. And they should be updating their information if things change, right? If their address changes, if they change legal entities from you know, I don't know, corporation to an LLC or things like that. So we can send, so say you guys are creating a requisition, and when you put in the supplier, they're not currently in this system. You will then request, you can send an invitation, like to have the vendor be invited. The vendor still would have to get that invitation, and then they have to onboard themselves. So a lot of times procurement will get requisitions and departments are like, what's the status of my requisition? Like, waiting on the vendor to fill out the tax paperwork and send it back to us because we can't do anything unless they send that to us. So that's going to be the same for you guys. Like, and on our campus, we no longer create suppliers. That's going to be done by somebody on the CSUBUY team at the chancellor's office. So that process probably is going to take a little bit longer. So you really kind of, I know it's hard, and I know you guys are, you know, you submit orders on behalf of a lot of other people who aren't always very timely in getting you the information that you need to submit the requisitions, but you may want to start stressing and training with them now that they really need to get that as far in advance as they can to get that to you, to make sure that these things go through the process. Because if the vendor's not in the system, they'll need to onboard themselves and get added on. And if insurance is required, they'll need to provide that. Any workflows that are built in the system, that's going to have to be done, because it will not, the requisition will not make it to procurement until all the checks and balances are done. So if it needs IT review and approval, that gets done before it comes into procurement. Now, right now procurement will get it and we will hold it until we know IT's approved it. We get it and I'll check, okay, this is consulting. I have to check with HR for independent contractor review. I will hold it until I get authorization from HR that I can proceed with that order. And sometimes that can take a few days. Sometimes that can take a few weeks or longer. So just know there's going to be, you know, those delays are already happening now, but just know in the workflow, it won't come into the procurement queue. You'll be able to see where it's at. So that's the nice thing. As you submit it, you can see in that requisition what step it's at, where it's at. So then you can bug those people and say, hey, what's the status of this?
With regards, since you brought it up, with regards to IT, if something is a software related product and we're trying to do a requisition, you know, currently we tell them to reach out to IT, and once we get that approval, we kind of attach the approval email with the requisition, send it in. What will that process be like in this new system as it
So,
relates to that?
so there's no, unfortunately, we can't integrate it with ServiceNow, which is the ticketing system that our campus uses for solutions consulting, just because that's not every campus in the system is using it. And any integration that we do with procure to pay, it's extra money for us to have to integrate it and hire folks to do that integration and a lot of time and energy to do it right. So what it is there will be a step, a workflow review, where if you're coding it and you're submitting it, it's catching it for the commodity code, you're indicating it as software. And there's actually a form too that you can within the system that's built, right? And it triggers it as an IT that requires IT review. So it's going to go into the IT review queue workflow, and there's going to be a group of about 4 IT administrators, and they're going to see, okay, has a solutions consulting ticket been submitted? If you guys did it already and it's been approved, great. They'll check that box and say, oh, great, yeah, this was approved. It's it's okay to move forward, and then it would
Okay.
proceed. Yeah.
Okay.
But if
All
it
right, so-
hasn't been, then that will trigger them to
Right.
reach out and say, hey, guess what, guys, you got to submit a solutions consulting ticket for this. And so it will be held in that review until it's gone through that process. So.
Okay, perfect.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Currently, when it comes to invoicing, we have forms that some of our vendors are required to submit along with. So for example, the payment request form.
Yes, we have discussed this, Jillian, and
Okay.
because of that we're not going to do away with that process. So we still have to route those forms for all the various signatures that are required. There's no way to integrate that process into this system because of the multiple signatures that have to be on that form and all the additional documentation. So that process will still be in place. The vendor, AP knows on any construction POs not to process payments. Even if the vendor were to submit an invoice directly for it, they won't process the payment. They'll wait for the payment request form to be processed, to be submitted by facilities. And you do have the ability to upload invoices in the system should we go that route. But yeah,
Okay.
that
Okay,
process
because I
will
was
still
wondering, is that
remain.
our responsibility to change the workflow when we request it or do the requisition? It's just going to be an automatic because it's coming from our department. That'll be in place. That process will be in place.
Yeah, construction is a different situation, and that's a requirement for, CPDC, so we can't change
Right.
that. And the system's aware of it, and we've discussed it, and this was what was determined. Campuses continue doing that same process for the payment request form. So
Okay.
however you're doing it now, you can currently continue to do it that way for construction payments.
Okay, got you. But then it'll just be uploaded by facilities. Okay. And then secondly, I think I know the answer, but just to be clear, you mentioned that the requester can send it to a analyst for review or approval. Is that can you accommodate more than one analyst reviewing that or approving that?
No.
Oh, okay. So whatever, if we need multiple sign-offs or reviews, it'll just have to happen internally before. Okay.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
it.
The way this system works is it only requires one approver for DOA. And the way the DOA is going to work is it's built based on dollar thresholds. So depending on the dollar thresholds that are set, there are going to be 4 levels for our campus based on dollar levels. And if it's a high dollar, it goes to the highest level approvers. So it won't go to a lower level approver first. It won't go to a level 4 and then go to a 3, 2, 1. No, it will just, if it's a $10 million requisition, it's going to go to level 1, which is going to be Tom Davis and the president, right? So that's how it works. So if there's internal approvals that you want to do ahead of time, you guys can do whatever process you're comfortable with doing that internally, but yeah.
Okay.
And then Laura's question, what if the chart fields are split between 2 areas? So I believe it goes to the DOA approvers if those chart fields have different approvers. If it's like, say, academic affairs and student affairs, then I believe it goes to the approvers for that dollar threshold for those 2 areas.
George has his hand raised, and then Jane had her hand raised for a while and then put it down. So George, you want to go first?
Thank you, Bianca. Yeah, first of all, if I don't make sense, I apologize. I kept thinking DOA standard for dead on arrival. Like, I don't realize I had a dead on arrival form. So that's all I could think of. So it took me a second. So but my question's on the
Thanks
vendor
for the humor. That's so great. So for in case anybody else has that, DOA is
and of course from the president's office, right? So.
DOA is delegation of authority. So that's who signs off on that expense, right? So it's usually, you
Let me
know,
put myself on mute. I'm sorry, I'm laughing.
the department head, the administrator, you know, whoever's signing off on that. Thank you for the laugh of the day, Jorge. I appreciate that. Now go ahead with your question.
No problem. My defense is late in my coffee right now, and there's plenty of times where I've sent things that my things are dead on arrival where they're supposed to go. But my question is around the vendor side. It's a two-part question. Are all current vendors that we've done 204 forms going to be migrated over into the new system, or do we have to, for example, have them registered through that link that's going to be coming from the system?
So we have invited, like, so Becky looked at all the current suppliers that we have in CFS to determine, okay, we did a massive cleanup. She went through it and to determine, you know, activity, right? If we haven't had recent activity with the vendor, and I don't know what your parameters were.
18 months.
18
I
months.
went back 18 months.
Then we didn't include them in this because likely they're no longer active vendors, right? So then she gave that information to the supplier team from Rise Now that's working on this project with us to then invite those suppliers to go in the system and register. So it's been an ongoing project to get these suppliers to register and even outreach, like, because Becky had to actually like reach out to these vendors, and I think Bethany was helping her on that project as well to get, you know, email addresses, because a lot of suppliers we had
numbers for
didn't have contact information, you know. So to get that information, just to even be able to send them an email to, so they could then get that invitation so they could onboard themselves. So some vendors have been responsive. Some vendors have not. Some vendors honestly have outright refused and said they're not going to do it. So it's been a little bit of a challenge. And I think, you know, as you guys have suppliers, like once we're fully onboarded and live in the system, you know, I would definitely inform vendors when you deal with them and say, hey, just so that you're aware, when you do business with the CSU and on our campus, this is going to be the process. You will need to go in and register yourself as a supplier in our system. You'll get an invitation via email, and then you'll need to go in and fill out all this information so we can officially add you as a supplier in our financial system so that we can pay you. We can't pay you
it's for
if
their
you
benefit.
don't do this.
Their invoice will not get lost in limbo, and they can get paid timely.
I think that will be a good incentive.
So that leads me to the next question then, and this is just the nitpicky part on my side. Is that notification to the vendor triggered by the user and quote unquote me when I'm putting in a request, or is that triggered from someone on your team, Marina?
It's actually going to be triggered by the
or
team. Yeah, through, I think, does the invitation come through Jagger? Does it come from there?
It comes from them, but it starts with our users.
Yeah.
When you look someone up in the system, and if they're not there, then you need to enter the information you know about them, and then it will go to the core CSU team. They will reach out to these people and send them the invitation. So it starts with you.
Yeah, so that's why it's like probably not a great idea to start a request for something that's the service is going to happen the next day, right? Because the chances of getting a new supplier that's not existing in the system, get them invited and have them enter their information and processed, because there's like some verification that also has to be done for them. There's some checks, like an OFAC check, which is checking like their what is that OFAC check for, Becky?
I don't know if their tax ID.
Yeah, I mean,
GIAC,
like they're really scrutinizing these vendors because, you know, unfortunately, there's a lot of fraud out there, and we want to make sure we're paying the right people. We don't want our money going to people fraudulently, you know, people that are imposters and folks that are trying to steal money. So they've really worked hard to include as what was requested by campuses, as well as what was recommended by auditors, to have these additional reviews built into our supplier management system. So that's one of the nice things about having this system, so that way we can make sure we're paying, and like making sure these folks aren't on some federal list that you're not authorized to pay these vendors because they're not supposed to be doing business with the state of California. They're not supposed to be doing, they're not supposed to be getting any federal grant money. So so yeah, just really be mindful for these vendors, because sometimes procurement's asked to perform miracles, and we'll get a requisition for an event that's happening the next day, and in this system it's really going to be almost impossible for us to turn things around that fast.
And my last question, Marina, I apologize for taking up some time here. Is the vendor list that pops up when we're in there, is that going to be CSU wide, or is that campus specific? For example, if there's a vendor that's worked with another CSU and now they're working with us providing similar services, will they populate in that, or will they have to go through the vendor registration process?
It's kind of both. If they've looked at that list and they're trying to determine, like, if a vendor's doing business with multiple campuses, then this will be a supplier that's available for everybody's viewing. But then if there are campus specific vendors, then that might just be limited to like our campus to use. So we're still trying to kind of fine tune that, but that's how it was explained to us. And I know we've been trying to push to add more vendors to make them system wide, like especially the ones that we're familiar with and we know that other campuses are going to use. So hopefully by the time we're live, we'll have more suppliers in the system, since we have 2 other campuses that are in the process of going live before we do. So,
and if a department requests, if a user requests a vendor, the CSU team that's auditing that's reviewing that, they will know, if they recognize that they already have that with a different campus, they'll let us know, and then we can just add, say if we have a different remit address or something, or contact, they can add it to the current record.
if anybody has to jump off because we're past time, feel free to do so. If anybody wants to stay on, we can go a little bit longer. I did want to say, because I've noticed it's become kind of a, I'm not going to say a trend, but vendors sometimes will have an expectation that when they do a service on campus, they're going to be paid immediately after. That is not CSU policy. Our standard payment terms are net 30. And that's in arrears. So that means they do the service, then they submit an invoice. 30 days from the date of invoice is when they can expect to receive payment. So really be mindful when you talk to these vendors, and if they're saying, and I'm going to get paid like the day I come out, right? No. We shouldn't be promising that. That shouldn't be the expectation we set, because it's not CSU policy number 1, and that just puts a lot of pressure on the procurement and the AP teams. Keep in mind, we only do check runs like once a week, and the check invoices have to be submitted like 3 days in advance of a check run. And AP has to know it's a priority to make it for that check run. And then checks, there's a process for them to approve checks. Then they get to cashiers, then they have to be mailed out. So yeah, just be very careful when talking to these vendors, and really don't promise them payment day of, or right afterwards, because that is not CSU policy.
I had a question regarding that. Is there a way that language can be like stated in somewhere of the user registration for the vendor? Like,
Good
so they're
point.
like made aware of it, because we work with a lot of vendors in office events, and we make sure that they're aware of it. But I feel like it's better when it's said from like a system that's higher than me,
It's on the PO currently.
Okay.
Like if they look at the general provisions that's referenced on procurement purchase orders, it's in there.
Okay.
it's on our payment terms as well, right? Like if
Okay.
it prints on the PO and it says our payment terms are net 30. So I mean that's pretty clear. Of course they'll always try and they'll always ask,
Yeah.
and you know, if there is some special circumstance, you know, I'm not saying that an exception could not be made, but that really has to be, there's a lot of hoops that have to be done to do that. And I don't like making promises that we can't keep. So it's really better that we tell them standard
yeah.
CSU payment terms are net 30. You know, we're good for it. We're not going to disappear. We're the state of California. We've just, our campus celebrated our 50th anniversary, a few years ago? So we're not going anywhere. You guys don't have to worry that you're not going to get paid. We're not some fly by night company that's going to fold up our tent and fly away.
And then I had actually a question. I know you were talking about how it's going to be a hassle if the chart field strings have to be changed after a requisition is processed. So essentially, is that the same case for like the total invoice amount? If it decreases or increases, is that going to be like a whole process to update that PO?
Decrease, no. Increase, it would have to go through workflow approval again.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So but
that
it's not going to be a
triggers
whole. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say it's not impossible to do, but just know that that has to be done through the system. So right now, you know, it's really easy because you just send an email to procurement and procurement does it. But now you guys will be the initiator for those things. So
that's great. And then one more with the business meal approval forms are we still going to be including that on the invoices when we submit it? Like just include it like in combined PDF?
She's coming with good questions.
I know. So you want to cover that, Becky?
Yes. So for the payments that are in P2P in CSUBUY, the business meal, there is not technically a business meal approval form. It's going to ask you questions.
Okay.
You will you will be asked questions, and as you answer them, it's going to collect the same information that the form would have.
Oh, so great. So we won't need blankets anymore, essentially.
So unless, no.
Unless it's obviously on a pro card, but
unless you have a pro card or an employee reimbursement or something like that, then we will have to use the same form.
Perfect. Well, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, I'm looking at a question Adriana asked. Will vendor payments via direct pay no longer be allowed when P2P goes live? So it just depends on what the payment is, Adriana. The request, everything starts with a request, whether it's a DP or a requisition. The system's kind of intuitive to determine whether it ends up being a DP or a requisition. But it's still going to be within the procure to pay system. So everything initiates within that system for vendor payments.
Now, it's not.
Did that answer your question?
It's not going, we're not cutting it off the day that we go live, right, Marina? There will be a date when we no longer.
Yeah, we will look at that. Like I'm hesitant to say dates now because there's so much up in the air, but as we get closer to go live and we're for sure know that that's going to happen, we'll start determining, you know, the dates as to when we're going to start turning things off, because I know there's going to be some things that are going to be in transition, right, already in process. So we'll work with you guys on that. But I think we have a list, and we'll look at, and obviously we'll have to update again our handbooks and our documentation, so that way it's very clear what gets submitted, what's processed as direct pay, what's processed as a requisition PO. So that way there's not really confusion for you guys to know that. But the system is pretty intuitive that it kind of also determines that based on what it is you're ordering. And again, there's the two different commodity codes for DPs and requisitions. So we'll try to make sure we give you guys that clear information and documentation, so that way it makes it very easy for you guys to know that there was something else I was gonna bring up right now. Oh, while we're here, so you know, we are moving all of the supplier catalogs that are on the marketplace into procure to pay. So all those transactions that you guys do on ProCard and CSUBUY shopping will now be done as requisitions and procure to pay. So the good news is any item that you're ordering that's a catalog, as long as it's not something that would trigger some type of workflow review, it should go through without requiring procurement review. So if you're doing an order for office supplies, if it's I want to say that threshold is $5,000 in the system, and you're ordering office supplies from Staples, it will go through. And it doesn't have to go through on a Pro card. So great news, guys. You don't have to reconcile a Pro card statement every month. So think about how much time that will save you, especially for some of you guys that have these really long and lengthy reports that you have to reconcile every month. Like I'm thinking facilities for all the stuff that you guys probably are ordering from some of these catalog vendors. So just know that we're migrating that from the CSUBUY shopping Pro card will now be using these catalog vendors through CSUBUY procure to pay. All right. Any other questions?
Tammy's celebrating.
Yay. Well, I'm glad somebody's
Good news.
happy to hear that. Yeah. I know for some of you guys that have to reconcile these huge reports and then get all your receipts and everything like that. Oh, and I might as well make this announcement while you're all here. We are going to be turning off office supplies from Amazon, and information is going to be going out, the reasons why, but I was contacted from the chancellor's office, and there's some pretty important reasons why we should not be ordering office supplies from Amazon. And when I say office supplies, I'm talking just office supplies like papers, pens, notebooks. I'm not talking about everything under the sun, but you know, be advised that that information is going to be coming out, and the chancellor's office is going to be turning this off. And this was not a campus decision. This was a chancellor's office. So you know this is coming. So just an FYI on that.
Because it's things that are also available from Staples.
Yeah, the CSU has a system-wide agreement with Staples, and it's really supposed to be exclusive for office supplies. And there's they meet requirements that the CSU needs them to meet. And so for those reasons, and it'll be in the information that Bethany will be sending out shortly to advise you guys of this. So anything else?
I'm scared to ask this question, but you mentioned there's some small items I order from Amazon that some can look as office supplies, but some cannot. Specifically around pens. What kind of justification or discussion do I need to have on something specifically that I use? And the reason I do that is for cost-effective reasons, for easy giveaways during like Oktoberfest and Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and presentations at different classes and stuff like that. So, so can you give me, a little bit of how I know it's going to be strict, but is there certain things that we'll be able to order that might
The
not
only way, Jorge, is if it's not available in office, if it's not available in Staples. But even then, if it's categorized as office supplies, I don't control the catalog vendors, and so I don't control the shutoffs and everything like that. So I was just told this is going to be happening, so be aware. So if you want to shoot me an email and let me know what it is you're trying to do, because we can try to reach out to our Staples representative. If you're buying in bulk and you can have, you know, if you have a very large order, you know, if you can provide like, here's what I'm ordering generally, like within a year, we can look at Staples and say, hey, you know, you need to sharpen your pencil. Can you be more competitive on this and see what we can do? I can't make any promises, but that's maybe something that we can look at.
Okay, well, expect that email and try not to laugh too hard when you see it. Okay.
We will do our best.
It won't be DOA, right?
Thanks, Mike.
All right, guys, I know we're well over time. Thank you all for being on board. And just if there's any other questions that you guys have, feel free to shoot any of us. Again, Bianca, myself, Becky, Tina, Bethany, an email.
Even me. So,
even Mike Chavez,
yeah.
interim Mike. Interim Mike.
I got Post-it notes that say that. So.
Yeah. We are here to support you guys through this process. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be a change for the campus, but I know in the long run, everybody will enjoy this system. So, all right. Thank you all. Hope you have a
Thank you,
beautiful,
everyone.
wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.